So one of the first questions that the whole student body has to ask themselves who are hearing this seminar is, how committed to the truth are you really? Not what you want to tell yourself. Objectively, can you measure your commitment to truth? Well, you know what? I say there is one objective, measurable dynamic that can tell you your own commitment to truth. Type your name wrapped in double quotes into any search engine of your choice and see what work comes back to you that you've put out into the world to show people how they must improve and how they must align themselves morally to have real freedom in their lives. And you know what most people will come back out with? A big, fat fucking goose egg. And you know what more they'll come out with? They won't even see their name because they're anonymous cowards online. How many anonymous secret agents are right here in this seminar? How many secret agents that I have to deal with getting people into the Telegram group? And guess what? You want to be offended? I don't give a shit. Turn it the fuck off. You know, I don't want to get into a super adversarial dynamic like that, but I just talk about people who actually showed up in this seminar. There's so much cowardice and non-commitment to truth that, yeah, you showed up for a seminar, but you don't even want your real name out there. I call these people the secret agents. Secret agent man, secret agent woman. I mean, it's sad. It's pathetic. You're basically you're going like this to the world. I'm a coward. Out in the open, boom. A big burst right out from the heart and the mind, displaying cowardice to the entire world. That's why most people have no internet presence. They're not active anywhere in propagating truth out into the world. It's disgraceful. Real shadow work will force one to deeply consider their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own behaviors, and above all, their willingness to follow truth wherever it leads and then propagate it out into the world. Most people have not developed a deep commitment to truth and therefore will tend to bail out when the going gets tough. They'll be the first person that won't have your six. They'll be the first person that'll get you dead. They'll be the first person to run a million miles in the other direction. Shadow work, when practiced correctly, will help one to develop their personal willpower and courage, which in turn will help them to develop a deeper commitment to truth in their lives. This commitment to truth is actually cosmic love, or agape. It is not the lower forms of love, which are romantic love and fraternal, or brotherly slash sisterly love between family members, familial love, friendship, etc. Even just brotherly love for people in the world. That's still not agape. Agape is cosmic love. This is the commitment that I'm talking about to truth, because they're one and the same. One's will is directly proportional to how much love they have for the world. Your will to change yourself for the better so that you can contribute to changing the human condition for the better is how much agape you have within you and how much you display out into the world. Agape means cosmic love. It means not just the love of, a romantic partner or even a family member or a friend or a human being in the world. It means love for truth, commitment to truth, love for developing the self and developing the will to move forward and do what's required. That's what agape is. That's cosmic love. That's cosmic love to move consciousness in the universe forward. Most people don't have that. Most people don't even know what that is. They've never touched it one moment in their life. And that's what shadow work is about, helping you to develop. You could develop the lesser dynamics of love, which are eros and philos, in other words, romantic love or brotherly love, but agape is cosmic love, and that's what most people really have to come into attunement with and alignment with. If their shadow work will help you do that and help you really get into alignment with that form of cosmic love so that you can really meet the requirements for changing the human condition for the better. for real freedom. One of the things that you have to be willing to say in shadow work is that you're not okay. And even more and worse than that, you have to be willing to say you may be really fucked up. You may be traumatized. You may be completely fucked up. So these are words that you got to say to yourself. I'm not okay how I am. I'm not okay where I'm at. I recognize that. I acknowledge it. And I'm making a commitment to change it for the better. And you got to say to yourself, I may even really be fucked up. I may have fucked myself up. Other people may have contributed to fucking me up and traumatizing me. And it's okay to say that, and you got to be brutally honest with yourself. Real shadow work requires intimate admission and acknowledgement that you are hurt, inadequate, or even damaged in some ways or many ways. This is about dealing with your own personal trauma. Admitting these things is not only a good thing, but an absolutely essential component to beginning the process of shadow work. It is indispensable. You cannot skip or skirt this step. The truth is that none of us are perfect. We are all somehow hurt, inadequate, or damaged, or traumatized. All of us. We all have traumas that we are not dealing with to the extent that we should in our lives, all of us. Admitting that we are not okay and that we may even be truly messed up in certain ways is actually the very beginning of the self-healing process. This is where it has to begin. That's where it has to initiate within the individual. You can't just think I'm okay, I have every answer, I'm not traumatized in certain ways. Look, folks, in making this presentation, I was doing these shadow work techniques throughout the year. And I have to say, it was successful. I was very traumatized earlier this year for many reasons, for personal reasons I would not even talk about or go into because it's none of anybody's business but mine. And I'm telling you, look, folks, it's no secret, I mean, I had so much death happen within the last several years. My entire family, that I was basically were my family members. Barb passed away. Both of my dogs passed away. My stepfather passed away. My biological father passed away. Just that's uprooting a ton of trauma and instilling it. Interpersonal problems, you name it. Problems with work. Just so many things continuously traumatize and re-traumatize you. Am I just going to let it defeat me? Some days I feel so depressed I want to lay in bed all day. But am I just sitting there doing that? No. I get up, I do what's required, I continue to do the work, I continue to do the shadow work, I chip away at it. That's what you have to do. You have to have a never say die attitude. And you got to chip away at these things. You got to recognize they're there, and you can't let them defeat you and grind you into the ground and into a pulp. That doesn't mean that some days aren't harder than others, because believe me, they are. But you pick yourself up, you keep moving forward. You don't give up. And you recognize and acknowledge the trauma. You recognize and acknowledge not being okay. You recognize and acknowledge being fucked up in many cases. And then you say, this is where it begins. I have to start work from there. And I just have to say, doing this presentation drudged up so much of that and stirred it. And I have to say, I'm very happy with the work that I've done on myself this year while I'm making this content. Intellectually knowing it and being able to put it into words, very difficult. But guess what? It's still not the same as actually doing that work on yourself. And that's what I was doing the entire time I was making this presentation. And it's still not done. It's not perfect. But there's progress. And I could gauge my progress. And we'll talk about how to do that later in part 3. So this is where it has to begin. Acknowledgement that you're not okay. And no one fully is, especially with the traumas going on in our world today. But then the next thing you have to be able to say to yourself in preparatory work for even doing the methods of shadow work is, I don't have to stay this way. See, this is what in the Buddhist tradition they talk about. People erroneously say that Buddhism says that life is suffering. Absolute nonsense. Nowhere in any real Buddhist text does it say life is suffering. And this is how obfuscation comes in with organized religious traditions, even Buddhism. The concept in Buddhism is that life contains suffering, not that it is suffering. Buddhism considers life a wonderful miracle, as do I. Life contains suffering. Then there are forms of suffering that are unavoidable. Natural disasters are going to happen, right? That's going to create suffering and trauma. It's largely unavoidable because we're not controlling all the forces of nature as human beings. But then there's other forms of suffering that you can do something about. These are the self-inflicted forms of suffering, and the forms of suffering that come about through religious thought, through nonsensical thought forms. Completely distorted thinking creates suffering in one's life when we act upon untruth. And then Buddhism says, when you recognize those creators of suffering in your life that are self-inflicted and inflicted by distorted thought forms, then you can correct them. There are methods, that's the Eightfold Path, that by which you are able to correct those self-inflicted forms of suffering. So this is a different kind of shadow work in a different tradition that is saying, we don't have to stay this way. We can self-improve. We can change our distorted thoughts into thoughts that are in alignment with reason and in alignment with nature. So this is the second part of the shadow work process, is you have to realize, while I may be fucked up, I may be completely traumatized, and I'm not okay. And that has to be acknowledged. The next step is you have to say, I don't need to stay that way. There are methodologies for dealing with those traumas and those inadequacies. So while the first steps into shadow work require one to admit that they are not okay at the current moment, the very next admission is that things do not need to stay that way. The only things that are truly permanent in life are the laws of nature. Those things we cannot argue with, and we cannot deny, and we cannot say we'll just skirt and ignore them and somehow wish to come out on top. The universe doesn't work that way. But those are the only things that are set in stone, is the laws that the creator of the universe set into motion at the creation of the universe. Other states are conditions which have changeable parameters, and they are often self-inflicted. And then we can change the programming, and then we can change the manifestation, therefore. This understanding is an integral part of one's life worldview. Once again, worldview is the first thing that must change in the shadow work process. It's an integral part of one's life worldview, which must change for the better if the individual is to change for the better, and if the individual is then to contribute for the betterment of all of society and human civilization. So worldview has to heal first. Without worldview healing, there is no further healing. It's possible to do a little bit of it, but it will not be truly lasting, and it will not be something that is really a deep and profound change that then propagates to other aspects of life. Continuing. One's worldview must reflect that positive change is possible. So this is what you hear a lot of people say. It's not possible to change that. Nothing can be done. I can't do anything about these things. Absolutely incorrect. 100% true positive change is possible within the individual and within the species. It's just the requirements for that manifested positive result must be known and met. The requirements must be known and met. Most people don't even know what those requirements are, let alone are they even attempting to meet those requirements. That's the problem. But the worldview that it is possible to change it once we have that knowledge and then we make a deep commitment to right action, that it absolutely is possible to make those positive changes. So life worldview is the very first change that must occur before shadow work is even attempted. And I'm sorry, I have a spelling error there. I'll correct it. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to correct it. So let's do that. How about that for an interactive seminar? Because I want my slides to be the best they can in the presentation and even when I put this out online. So, life worldview is the first change that must occur before shadow work is even attempted. One's worldview must reflect that positive change is possible to achieve. This does not mean that those positive changes are automatic or that they will be easy. No one's promising those things. I just told you positive change is possible with enough work, with understanding the causal factors, with making a commitment to change, and then taking the right action to change. We're going to talk about all of those dynamics. But it doesn't mean that that's an automatic process. It means you have to work at it. It doesn't mean that it's easy. As a matter of fact, it's actually quite often exceedingly difficult, and it requires tremendous willpower to be developed and worked with in order to make those changes happen and manifest. But if one cannot even acknowledge that positive change is possible, in other words, if you're black-pilled and you think, oh, everything's just set in stone and it's all degrading and it's going to hell in a handbasket and there's nothing anybody can do about it, then your efforts are going to be self-sabotaged at a subconscious level at every step of the process of shadow work. You're not going to get anything done. You're not going to get any positive stuff accomplished because you've already set in your mind the worldview, oh, that's not really possible. And you know what sets you up for that worldview the most? Religion. Religion puts its big mythical figures like Jesus or Buddha or whoever at such a high level. They set them up on such a tall pedestal that people look at them and go, you know what? That level of perfection is impossible. So why bother? I'm not going to try. And you see the damage religion will do by setting up these figures in this mythical high pedestal position. I'm going to talk about not putting anybody on a pedestal later in this presentation. Even people that teach you the truth, you shouldn't put them up on a pedestal. I don't want to be put up on a pedestal. Number one, when people do that, it's fucking creepy. I'm not your master, your guru, your priest, whatever. I'm just somebody who's trying to explain how some things work to you, and hopefully you unfuck your head as a result of learning those things, because most people's heads are badly fucked up. So that's all I can do, is act as a way shower through knowledge. Okay? But don't self-sabotage by being black-pilled and thinking things are impossible. They're not possible. You can get from where you're at to your goal, but you got to put in the work. It's not automatic. And this is all about the life worldview battle, folks. That's what shadow work is all ultimately about. And you know what's going on in the world? Absolute, abject, miserable failure. It's so skewed toward one side, it's laughable. I'd say it's 98.5 to 99% skewed toward one side, is that most people have been convinced through their parents, their teachers, their nonsensical religion, their politics, whatever, all the religious garbage nonsense that they believe in their distorted minds. They have been convinced of the worldview that what the purpose of all human life is, what the purpose of their life is the acquisition and attainment of the most comfort and pleasure. That's what prevailing worldview number one in the entire world. And that's why the world is currently right now going to hell in a handbasket. That's why we are losing our freedom. Because it's not the worldview and stated will and potential of most people to truly learn and grow in consciousness and become a better version of themselves each and every day and learn true morality and help propagate it to the world. No, they can't be bothered with any of that. They got to attain as much comfort and pleasure as possible every single day, and they wake up thinking me, 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 and they go to bed thinking me, 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 me. And if you don't think that's true, something's badly broken in your brain. If you don't think that's the prevailing worldview. And let me tell you what that worldview really is and really constitutes. De facto Satanism. There's another one of my presentations you can learn from. First of all, most people don't know Satanism is just runaway rampant egotism and just completely staying ensconced in the dynamics of the pleasure pursuit and comfort pursuit. That's it. That's all Satanism really is at its lowest level. At the highest level, it's trying to be God, usurp the place of the Creator, make your own laws, and rule everybody else as your slaves. That's the highest level. But guess what? At the very highest level, those evil sorcerers of mind control can only control the masses if they give them the worldview that all life is about is their own comfort and pleasure. And then they're got. That's how you got, is by buying into the worldview of de facto Satanism, that all life is about is you accumulating as much comfort and pleasure as possible. And folks, let's make no mistake about it, all that ideology is Satanism. And that doesn't mean the worship of the devil, man. You know, it means that you're obsessed with the self. And you can't be bothered with anything outside the self. And that's what a bad person is. That's an immoral being. If all things are equal, go and have as much pleasure as possible. But if there's injustice in the world, and there's tyranny, and there's slavery, and you're just worrying about your own fucking comfort, don't turn around in the next breath and then tell me you're a good and moral human being, because you're a lying sack of shit. If that's what you believe. The true purpose of human existence is to learn and grow in consciousness, such that we understand natural law, we understand the laws of the universe, we can grow and expand in consciousness, we can become a spacefaring civilization at some point, and what that ultimately is true spirituality. It's commitment to truth. It's commitment to learning and knowledge. It's commitment to growing in consciousness. It's commitment to growing in morality. It's commitment to self-improvement. It's commitment to willpower. It's commitment to self-actualization. And that means getting off your lazy ass and taking action on yourself and then assisting other people to go through those same changes that are very difficult but profoundly rewarding. This is the worldview everybody needs to battle, folks. You need to choose your side in that worldview, and you need to be honest about your choice. How many people really are engaged with true spirituality? Don't even tell me the New Agers out there are, because they're full of shit too. They're in projection mode. They're in spiritual bypass mode. They're not doing the real work. They're not even looking at things that are negative that are actively happening. And they think they're informed in some way? You think you're learning and growing when you're saying don't talk about all the negative shit that's happening in the world? You don't even know what the fuck's going on, let alone are you doing something positive about it. You're engaged in comfort and pleasure, alleged spirituality. You know, live for your bliss, man. Bliss out. Meditate until you're so internally drugged up with endorphins that you're in a totally spaced out daze. That's not spirituality. That's pseudo-spiritual masturbation is what that is. If you think that's spirituality, you've been sold a false bill of goods, son and gal. So you got to come out of that de facto Satanism, egotism worldview. That this is about my bliss or my comfort or my pleasure. You got to realize this is for the learning and growth of all. So that we all may be free and we all may progress in consciousness. It shouldn't be that difficult to understand, folks. The problem is it's obfuscated, and most people don't have very clear understanding of it and understandable definitions in their minds. So this is where shadow work has to begin. It's a battle between life worldviews. As I said before, and what deeply needs to be understood conceptually is no positive change is automatic. This is not a process of automation. This is not press a button and then the universe does the rest of the work. This is how a lot of the new age variants of schools of thought want to teach people that things work. Oh, it's a part of the natural process. You know what part of the natural process was getting your biological evolution up to this point where you can then use your brain and your mind to understand what needs to be done, what the prerequisites are, what the requirements are, and then do them. That's what nature was charged to do biologically. And once that biological process of evolution is done, it's not taking us any further. It's then handing it off to epigenetic evolution. It's handing it off to evolution of consciousness, which either we're doing or not doing. That's a self-directed process of further evolutionary progression. How many people really understand that? Too few. Positive real-world change is not an automatic process embedded in nature. If you believe that, again, you've been sold false spirituality. And it is not an automated process either within an individual or in the world at large. It doesn't just automatically happen. Good doesn't automatically triumph over evil, folks. Once again, if you bought into that garbage, bullshit notion, you've bought into false religion. Good is not an automated process that grows and triumphs over evil automatically. If you think that, it's one of the biggest psyops that's ever been conducted to get people not to do the work that they need to do, not to meet the requirements, not to truly self-improve and self-actualize and make a real difference in the world through action. That gets people sitting back on their ass, doing nothing, saying, oh, God, it's in God's hands, and it'll just move things in whatever way it needs to move or remanipulate it, and it's all automated and it's all assured. Total and utter bullshit. Nothing is set in stone or guaranteed except natural law, except the laws of nature. That's it. The laws of the universe, the moral laws and the physical laws are set in nature. And they're not processes of automation. They're processes of determinism. They're definitively and completely determined and locked in and always work that way universally. Eternally, timelessly, universally, omnipresent. That's why you don't fight against those laws. You step into the slipstream with them and align your behavior to them. Those are the automated processes of nature. I wouldn't even use the word automated. They're the determined processes of nature. The work we have to do to unfuck our minds and really come into alignment with the laws of nature, especially the moral ones, and truly self-improve, that's not an automated process. It requires work. It requires willpower. It requires dedication. It requires practice. All of the things we're going to focus on in the seminar today. Outcomes are variable when it comes to these dynamics, and based upon how much time, attention, energy, willpower, and focus are brought to bear in the given situation. Good does not automatically triumph over evil. Improvement does not automatically triumph over stagnation. These concepts have to be grokked if you're to understand the shadow work process. And again, we haven't even gotten to the process. This is prerequisite understanding requirements conceptually, which most people do not have. Not only don't they have them completely wrong. They have them distorted and embedded in their mind through false religion, through the New Age nonsense, through government and authority, through politics. And this is part of the acknowledgement of how fucked up your mind is. You got to ask yourself, how religiously fucked up am I? How badly have I bought false bills of goods? And now I'm attached to them like a maggot attached to a dead body, eating dead flesh, clinging on to it like it's for dear life. Because that's what most people's mindset is, and they have no intention of changing it. This is what you got to do when you do shadow work. You got to say, how many fucking lies have I bought into? How much damage am I doing not only to myself and continuing the damage that's been done to me, I'm continuing to do it to myself. And by propagating that nonsense, I'm doing damage to other people. And I'm traumatizing them and I'm fucking them up. And as a result, helping to fuck the world up. And once again, you got to be honest with yourself about this. And you got to tell yourself, There's no automation here. I have to do the work. I have to meet the requirements. I have to develop the willpower. I have to develop all of the qualities, spending my time, paying attention, being focused, bringing the energy forward. Right? If I just said, "Oh, this is willy-nilly. I don't need to spend the hours that probably would amount to hundreds of hours making all these slides and transitions and getting it all set right and getting my word and verbiage right." I could have just said, "Oh, however it comes out, it comes out. Who cares?" This took time, effort, patience, willpower, dedication, sacrifice, doing things that I didn't want to do at the expense of other things I did. And those things I did want to do got pushed to the wayside. They got set on the back burner, and I sat there and did what was required. And that's what I attempt to do every day before I go and do whatever comfort pursuit I may want to do. I take care of work first. And I don't mean work just to make money. I'm talking about the real work, the work here, and then out in the world. Take care of that work. Make that the priority. Make that take precedent. Sacrifice for that. I want self-driven, self-learning, self-improving warriors. That's what's going to make a dent in the human condition of slavery. Positive change has specific, real-world requirements. These are not random things. These are not things that, oh, there's no set requirements that actually have to be done. Like, we'll just let the chips fall where they may and see what happens. No, you have to determine what the requirements are and then meet them. Positive real-world change has specific requirements attached to it. These are often a combination of factors, including but not limited to knowledge, skill, time, attention, energy, dedication, focus, discernment, presence, and persistence, and many others. These are the qualities we have to work within ourselves if we're ever going to meet requirements for real change. It doesn't just happen by itself. It takes hard work. It takes time and attention, the spiritual currencies. You have to pay into it. You have to put dedication into it to get reward out the other side. You have to be persistent. You have to be consistent. You have to keep doing it. This isn't a one-time thing. If you think, "Oh, I've showed up at the shadow work seminar that Mark's going to deliver. I'm going to learn everything I need to know and it's all going to be okay after that." Nonsense. This is an ongoing process that requires full commitment and dedication in a life capacity too. And that happens by making a worldview change. You got to first make the change here to understand what you need to do to change yourself and then make the commitment to actually do it. But if you don't make the worldview change here and you don't understand what's involved, the requirements that are involved. Builders don't just build a house. You got to know how many material. You got to know the building techniques and practices. It's not just built willy-nilly out of nowhere with no skill. This is about development of skills, life skills. But boy, I'll tell you, just even dealing with, look, I have to say it at the result of just blatant, I won't mention any names, but let me just tell you something, folks, as a little anecdote or addendum to what I'm saying here. There are people present in this class right now that their life skills are so tragically abominable. I cannot believe that they made it to adulthood alive and weren't the recipient of a Darwin Award in some capacity and ended up killing themselves through stupidity. I cannot believe it. And these are the people who seek out this work. I would be so appalled if some of the life skills, if my life skills were so low that it's like, what have you done your whole life? Do you have any experience? Did your parents teach you anything? Did your teachers teach you anything? Did even friends teach you anything and try to share life skills and experience? How could you stay that stagnant? To people that really don't even grasp how any electronic transfers of money work, to people who don't know how to pack a package or an envelope or sign a check or whatever. It's like it's unfathomable. This is what depresses me and makes me want to stay in bed some days, that I find it unfathomable that an adult can make it to an adulthood with that kind of lack of skills. And that just shows you how bad their parenting was. It was absent, let's face it, absent, gone, not there. Or it was so negligent, it was in such a state of negligence that they might as well have been not there. It's profoundly sad. And then could you imagine, these are the people that say they want self-improvement. Imagine the rest of this tragically horrendous world and where people are at in consciousness in it. It's disgraceful. I just had to say that as an addendum because it has to be said in no uncertain terms and in harsh terms. As critically important as all of these factors are to actually understand what the requirements are and meet them, a change, listen to this again, folks, because we're going to keep coming back to it. A change in life worldview is paramount to all. If your worldview isn't changed for the better and healed, largely healed, shadow work is essentially meaningless. Worldview has to change first. And that's the most important change that has to occur. In keeping with the very first principle of nature from the Hermetic tradition and that underlies all of natural law, the principle of mentalism, which states that the all is mind. Everything is a function of consciousness and mind. Only after a new mindset is taken can new and better results be achieved. That's it. If the new mindset, if you don't prepare the way and usher in a new mindset through a new worldview, a healed worldview, no better results in your own consciousness and in your own personality and in your own framework as a being can truly be achieved long-term and be long-term successful. Worldview must heal first. Positive change deeply involves and requires true personal responsibility. If we are ever going to truly improve ourselves at the microcosmic level, the level of the self, and true deep personal psychology, and if we're ever going to improve the human condition at the macroscopic level, in other words, end human slavery and the belief in authority, which leads to all forms of slavery in our world, we must first accept that it is our own personal responsibility to take on that effort, meaning to learn those requirements and then teach them to others. It is not a mission for some. Let me say this again. Learning the requirements to create change in the self and in the world and propagating them to everyone is not a mission for some. It is a mission for all, which intimately involves the self. It's not just my work. People go, oh, well, that's your work, Mark. And yeah, that's what they sound like. They really sound like they have Down syndrome. That's not my work, Mark. That's your work. That's everyone's work. All the morons out there who say that's not your work. Yes, it is. You just haven't been doing it. And that's why I say you can get as offended as you want hearing what I'm saying directly to you about you. It's still true. And is gonna be true. Forever. Stop saying it's only about some, it's only for some. That's not the work or mission for some. That's what all of our mission, one mission actually is, one great work. And some have accepted the responsibility and got to work doing it on the spiritual battlefield. Some have attempted to reject their personal responsibility and they're absent from the spiritual battlefield. And here's the quote that goes along with it on the slide. Through our inability to accept personal responsibility, we were actually creating our own problems. Again, self-inflicted suffering through the denial of one's personal responsibility to improve oneself and our species. It's not a mission for some, it's a mission for everyone. Most people are just hard-headed, lazy, egotistical, apathetic, uncaring pranksters. They're just jokes of people that don't take anything truly seriously and don't understand the harm that they're really doing to themselves and the world. And it's not a laughing matter. It's not something to fucking joke about. It's deadly serious. It's a life and death situation based on where we're at with government and the violence that is capable of conducting upon us. And if you think that's a joke, when they bash your fucking head in and split your fucking brain in half, you're not going to be thinking it's a joke as you draw your last fucking breath. And nobody will be sorry for you. They'll be saying you should have paid fucking attention when you had the chance and changed when you had the chance. And then you wouldn't have brought that manifestation down on yourself and the whole world. Positive change is not fun and games. It requires hard fucking work. That's why it's not called the one big party. It's not called the one big circle jerk. It's called the one great work. It is not, the one great work is not about comfort and pleasure. That's a whole separate worldview. Once you take on the true worldview of true spirituality and you want to begin the healing process, you realize this is an alchemical process that is unbelievably difficult work because you're asking people to change at a fundamental level which they loathe change from. They want to stay hardened. They want to stay completely ensconced in their bad habits and in their, most of all, in their completely false, erroneous thoughts, in their distorted thought forms, which they're rigidly attached to religiously. The dynamic of true internal spiritual transmutation into a better human being is not something to be taken lightly. It is not a party. It is not a social scene. You see so many people in the freedom movement thinking this is some social scene. This ain't some scene, man. You know? To quote the Misfits, you know, you think you're a zombie. You think it's a scene from some monster magazine. Well, this ain't no fantasy, boy. This ain't no loving, you know, this ain't no happening, this ain't no feeling in my arm. This is real life, this is real world. You know? And that people don't take it seriously enough. That's what the Freemasonic tradition in consciousness is telling us. I'm going to get into that in a moment. We'll look a little bit into certain occult traditions as we did with the tarot earlier, and Kabbalah to an extent. But we're going to look at Freemasonry a little bit when it comes to this. This isn't a party. This isn't a form of entertainment. This isn't a social scene. It's very serious, hard work. And no one enjoys hearing that. They wish that it was just easy fun. See, that's dreaming, right? That's stop dreaming. This isn't easy fun. This is hard fucking work. I assure you, it is not easy or fun. I don't enjoy this process. There are ways of doing it successfully. There are best practices for it, but I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass and lie to you and tell you it's easy or fun, because it's not. To tell someone otherwise is to lie to both them and to yourself. Real positive change definitely and invariably requires deep dedication and often involves very difficult, painstaking work. That's what is represented by the alchemist pictured there and the alchemical tradition. It's volatile. It could blow up. It's very painstaking. It requires deep knowledge, and it requires total dedication to the craft. I could have been a chemist. That was another thing. Not only could I have been a professional bowler if I wasn't wrapped up in the great work all the time, but probably could have been a damn good chemist. Something that I had an aptitude for, and still do. Positive change requires personal sacrifice. Another dynamic involved in personal change and self-betterment, which far too few people consider, let alone do, is personal sacrifice. True self-betterment and deep involvement in the effort to better humanity requires the willingness to sacrifice one's time, energy, and resources, often in exceedingly uncomfortable ways. See, I've sacrificed my life and the things that I wanted to do or could have done to do this work, to self-improve, to self-actualize, to put this work out in the multifaceted forms that I've put it out to the world in over the years. That required sacrifice. That required not doing things that I wanted to do, so I would do the things that I am required to do. And once again, most people, even here in the group, forget the viewing audience on the internet. I mean, you want to talk about a nothing burger, that they're in negative space. Even the people here, how many people have work of their own? A few, not zero, but so few that it's a paltry, laughable number. And that's not going to get it done. To sacrifice one's own comfort is one of the most difficult challenges to face in this type of work, in this endeavor. Yet to truly make strides in such endeavors, such as shadow work and the one great work, self-sacrifice is absolutely critical and indispensable. You cannot do it while saying, I just want to do all these things for myself. Some of those things, not all of them, but some of them have to be cut away and put on the back burner and say, they may sit there for the rest of my life. I'm not going to ever be that champion bowler. I'm not probably never going to be that chemist. I'm not, I might have wanted to learn to be an artist. Probably not going to be a very accomplished artist. I might have wanted to learn to be a computer coder or programmer. That's probably not going to happen. I had to learn other things because they were requirements for this aspect of the work. So I'm going to pause there. It is now 12:30. We will be taking our lunch break for an hour and a half. I will see everyone for a continuation in section number 2 at exactly 2 p.m. I will not wait 1 second. At 2:00, I will launch into the second part. Okay? So please be back promptly at 2 p.m. I'll see everyone then. Thank you.